Hello, YouTube. This is BUB'S Comics coming at you with the No Faces Comic Chat. If you see a face in here, it ain't ours because we're no faces. Isn't that right, boys?
That is correct.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Empirical evidence aside, we are the No Faces Comic Chat with the Deep Dimension 3Ds. What do you guys think of that title? Either one of you, go ahead. Bash it at will.
Yeah, I mean it's all right. I like where you were going with it, so I'll give you an A for effort on that.
All right. I didn't even know you spelled effort with an A, but I'll take it. Yeah.
You know, I like it. I like the 3D Deep Dimension. I think it has like you know, for 3D collectors, it's a perfect little, you know, capsule of what it actually is. So yeah, I give you high marks for that one.
The only thing, it's a little title discriminatory because it applies perfectly to his 3D comics, but it doesn't apply perfectly to any of mine.
Oh.
None of mine are Deep Dimension. Mine are just standard.
Well, the depth of your dimension is but in your mind, DS. Don't worry. I think pretty deep.
The dimension of mine is rooted in the glasses. I think yours is a non-glasses like auto effect.
Well, most of mine were too, but I left. Actually, I have a little Golden Age wall at work, as you know, yes. And that's where I keep my Deep Dimension books. So, you know, it's working out having those books on the wall at work. I've got a lot more people. They come into my office and they say, oh, you know, most of the time you get the standard. Oh, I had one lady come in. She said, I have to do the impression in case anybody knows or is listening. They're like, I had all the comics. I had all those comics. And she's only like 50, but she sounds like she's 100, you know, Weezer, if you will. And she's like, I had all the comics. I had them all. I'm like, really? You had them all? Yes, I had all of them. My ex-husband got them. I was like, oh, okay, you know. But, you know, I have conversations like that often now, so it's pretty cool. I like when people come in and say, oh, I like those comics, or I used to have them, or I'm always waiting for someone to say, I got a bunch of those in my attic, and I'm like, I'm going home with you, you know?
Yeah, that would be the best thing.
Right behind you.
Yep. So far, I had one person bringing a collection, but it was all 90s Superman crap. So
yeah, the best thing about telling non-comic fans anything about the fact that you're into comics is that they might tell you, oh, I have a whole bunch in my attic, or my grandfather gave me his collection, I've never looked at it, you know, something like that. I'm still waiting for that to happen. But I've had a few people that I've looked at lots that simply I found because they're like, oh, you like comics? So I've got a bunch. Maybe you want them.
Yeah, early in my collecting, I had a coworker that was like, hey, I saw something on Facebook about comics. Did you hear about it? I'm like, no, tell me, you know. And it turned out that there was somebody selling comics on Facebook, and it was a horrible listing on their marketplace. And I went over there, and it turned out to be a comic shop that had closed that summer prior. And it was all the stuff from the comic shop in 2 big box trucks. And I got to dig through it all. I was only like the second or third person to get to it.
Oh, nice.
So I picked up a bunch of books. If I only knew then what I know now, I probably would have bought everything, you know, and just liquidated it. But at the time, I had a very modest collection, and I was only looking for specific things. So, as opposed to anything with value, right?
Yeah, there's a comic shop by me that went out of business, but he's trying to sell everything off, and he's doing all these Craigslist postings, and it's, you know, sort of like retail prices, like it's a bunch of like crap books for like, get these for $1 each, or get 11 of them for $10 type deal. Or he has some better ones and you can get them for like $10 each. And with all of them, it says, no dealers, please. No dealers, please. I'm not a dealer, but that tells me he's not willing to negotiate. So whenever I see somebody selling a lot or something and they say, no dealers, please, that means they're a dealer. We're trying to get top retail penny out of each book. And I don't waste my time with it. Because I would honestly, he's got a lot of stuff left. I would go see what he's got left and try to make a bulk purchase. But it's clear from his postings, he's not looking for that. He's looking to squeeze every penny out of these. And it's sort of like you'll sell a lot in the beginning and then a little less as time goes by. And it's like a decreasing curve that will it'll continually approach zero, but at a slower and slower rate, and he'll never be fully out of books. He'll just get to a point where he's hardly selling any off, and he's stuck with some. And maybe at that point, I can make a deal and get some. I don't know.
Yeah, just keep it on the watch list, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, I realize we probably have much of the same people we always have in the chats, but we'll go ahead and introduce each other. So, of course, I'm BUB'S Comics, my channel. If you found this video, you probably already know me. And if you know me, you almost certainly know the fella to my metaphorical right, which would be Roger. Metarog, say hello.
Metarog from the metaphorical right. Hello.
Yes.
Greetings, everyone.
Coming to you
I've
from
never
the
been
Medicaid.
introduced. I've never been introduced, in such an incredibly metaphorically directional way. But thank you.
Well, stick around. I'll make something out of you. Just don't worry. And to my, I suppose, secondary metaphorical right, because my metaphorical left is always busy. We have DS Comics. If you're not subscribed to DS Comics, we understand why. But we encourage you anyway to subscribe to old salty britches over there. Say hello, DS.
What's up? And if you are sub to me, I appreciate it. If you were sub to me, I appreciate it. And if you don't want to sub to me, I can appreciate that as well. So the only thing I can promise is honesty and sometimes minority view on comics topics.
Yes, that is for sure. But we love it. We absolutely love it. In the chat tonight, we got Werewolf by Lunchtime's already here. Charlton66, Deadpool 2323. We have, let's see. He's getting ready for Heroes Con, he is. And we got Pope Cerebus the First. And we know Werewolf by Lunchtime, he usually's got to check out early because he's got to go to work. So he's all the way, I think is he in Brisbane? I forget where he's at. I think he's in Brisbane.
Brisbane.
That's what I just said. Brisbane.
Oh, I thought you said Brisbane. I was like,
it is Brisbane.
I think it's Brisbane. I don't think it's a high A.
Well, then you haven't been to Brisbane.
Well, let me tell you. No, I haven't been to Australia.
There's all kinds of high A's over
maybe
there.
Someday.
We got.
He's in Perth. We're arguing here for nothing. He's in Perth.
Oh, man, well, we're good at that. We got Gray Man's in the house. He says, "I'm here, guys. 1,000 subs achieved today. Oh wow! So no unsub bums. All right,
congratulations.
Unsub the Gray Man. That way he can have another 1,000 drawing. That's what we need there.
Congratulations!
Yeah, congratulations.
Well, he's in the vinyl community and in the comic community, so he's like double dipping there. But congratulations, Gray. Great job.
Yeah, congratulations. I like that. I was just my mother had pulled out. So it's a very funny story, but I'll keep it really short because it's probably not that funny. So the real short version is that my dad had a huge record collection. Well, for a listener, he wasn't like a collector. He was a listener, right? So he had a ton of records. Of course, all of what would you consider vintage now, right? So a ton of records, and he was going to get rid of them. So my mom, in her usual fashion, was like, you know what? I'll take them. So he's like, fine, take them. So she got all his records. Now that they're somewhat more fashionable again, he's like, yeah, I think I still have that record. And she's like, you don't have any records. I've got all the records. So she got a new record player. She's been playing them and having a big time with them. So yeah, so she's got quite a few nice ones that I know go for pretty decent money. So hopefully she won't scratch them all, but I'm sure she's enjoying them. So that's my little vinyl story. We got Go-To Geeks in the house. We got Area 51 saying hello. Well, we've covered we got 4 countries represented here already tonight. That's pretty impressive. I'm happy with that. Let's see. And I guess a continent too, right? So 4 continents. Yes, 4 countries, 4 continents. North America is still the same continent. So
no, 7 continents, buddy.
I know there are 7 continents, but how many are represented in the chat tonight?
Well, we don't know. There could be all 7. There could be somebody in Antarctica.
I don't think there's all 7. There's nobody in Antarctica on this. It's too cold. It's too cold for Wi-Fi.
Well, they're underground.
No,
Midair.
you don't know that for a fact. The satellite reception.
You're speculating. You don't know that for a fact.
They got permanent settlements in Antarctica with great satellite reception. Antarctica is populated, man. It's got a permanent population.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
well, that's what we need.
And it's really not that cold in the summer.
Well, have you been there?
No.
Oh, well, I suggest you go.
It's probably cold.
It's cold.
Yeah. I don't think it gets all that much warmer in the summer somehow. It's still on an ice pack. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's warm in the summer. Like it'll be 60 degrees. It can get 50, 60 degrees in the summer.
Wow. We got from heroes to icons. We got go-to geeks. We got Marvel Hunter. Hello, Marvel Hunter. Good to see you in here. And we've got the comic collector, and the list must go on and on. That's awesome, guys. Thank you all for being part of this. Gretzky 9966 in the house. Discovery Bay discovered us. Thanks again for the plug-a-roo there. Doing hard, great work every day. And thank you all for joining us tonight. Our topic, if you'll allow it, is the what are we talking about tonight?
Novelties.
Yeah, novelty comics. So this is a term that I actually was unfamiliar with until I met DS Comics, because when I just referred to these comics as, I guess the 3D comics were just 3D comics, and I didn't really group anything else in that grouping. But really, I'd like DS to explain what he calls a novelty comic, because that is kind of what I have adopted as my definition as well. And for me, it's a whole grouping of comics. It doesn't have to be just a 3D comic or just a promotional comic, but to me, it's a whole grouping of comics that kind of are not keys because of their stories, but because of some production or method by which they're presented. So what do you say, DS? What's your definition of a novelty comic?
Well, I've spent a good deal of time thinking about this in my collecting, and just earlier today, I just was thinking about it during the day in preparation for this chat. So, I think a novelty comic is a comic that has an added cool factor, that's just sort of a gimmicky little thing that's added to a comic that adds that extra little cool factor, and it's just sort of a one-off little gimmicky thing. It can be, most of the time when I think of novelty, I think of an intentional gimmick like 3D comics or the holofoil covers from the 90s. Those are intentionally novelty books. They have a little certain added gimmicky cool factor, oddity thing to them. But there's unintentional, they're not really unintentional, but there's other things that sort of fall in the novelty realm, and Metarog would be the expert on these. But that would be like, going all the way to the spectrum, very loosely called a novelty, would be something like price variance or the Mark Jeweler insert. Double covers is a novelty. Now those are, some of them are just rare and they're unique to a very few books, and some are mistakes or errors. I consider the Venom 1 black cover to be a novelty, and that was an error. So you can get into, there's a lot of different subsets of novelties. There's 3D subset. There's a Mark Jeweler's insert subset. There's price variance. There's error. There's a whole group of collectors that go after errors and recalled comics. I think errors and recalled probably a lot of similar grouping of collectors there. Yeah, so they started to experiment with novelty stuff way back in the the 30s. They had serial giveaways, radio giveaways. Buster Brown's put out a comic that sort of had a novelty feel to it. It was put out by a shoe company. There was the radio giveaway ones. So there's novelties going way back to the beginning of comics. So it's nothing new, but the technology and the imagination has added new things along the line as far as types of novelties. And I think it really exploded in the 90s with, some of my favorites were those hologram covers on the Fatal Attractions 6-book crossover X-Men series. They had the holofoils. They had a Fantastic Four. They did a completely white cover. It was a white embossed cover. And that was just the most retarded novelty idea ever because you couldn't see it. So, I mean, yeah, any little quirky sort of odd thing. But when I novelty, strictly speaking, is something intentionally gimmicky about the book that was there on purpose. So that that's the full spectrum of what I think novelty comics encompass to me.
I think that's fair. I think for me though, if it's a novelty comic, I'm probably not going to group in anything that has value aside from the novelty effect. So I would pull out, Venom #1, because even though that particular version of the comic has a novelty effect to it or an error to it, the book itself still has value as a key. It might be kind of a minor key, but it's still a key. So I guess for me, a novelty comic is really where only the novelty effect, that's the only thing that holds any value over time. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think DS is really talking about two aspects of novelties, because there's novelty collectability and novelty in the marketing of the comic. Like I would say a Mark Jewelers or a price variant or an error variant, that's more of a novelty collectible. It's collectible because the novelty occurred somewhere in the in the collectible market that made it such. And then there are comics that are their selling point is their novelty, that they were marketed that way, and that would be like the 3D comics we're talking about, the enhanced foil comics. A few people are talking here about comics with records, like the one I'm showing here, comics with card inserts, like this one here, like the Robin 2, and various things like that. I would sort of differentiate those two. They're both novelties, but one is not the collectability, because the novelty makes it the collectability. The other one is more the marketing of it was the novelty, and I would make that distinction.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. Those are two sort of distinct ones, and that's why I broke out the 3D comics I have, because these really the only value that these have mostly, well, I don't know, mostly I guess is the 3D effect. So yeah, a lot of, like somebody mentioned, polybagged comics with the cards insert. That's a novelty. And the 90s is what I think of. The epitome of a novelty is the 90s, because they experimented with every type of novelty they could come up with, from acetate covers to, well, billfolds weren't new, but they really went far. The cutout, the die cut ones, like the Wolverine 50, I think, has a cool one. The holofoils, all that sparkling, gimmicky stuff they had in the 90s, that's novelty. And unfortunately, those are super cool novelties, and those books are really cool, but they're not worth anything because they just printed a billion comics in the 90s and destroyed the collectability of something. It's like once comics became known to be collectible, they tried to capitalize on that by making them collectible, and it undermined the very collectability of them. It's sort of like they're only collectible if you're not trying to make them collectible. When you try to make them collectible, you're undermining what makes them collectible, and that's what happened in the 90s. But getting a little off track there, as I often do. But yeah, so I think the ones that are the intentional stuff, where the value is the novelty, is probably what we're mostly focused on here.
Yeah, I would agree. We got a couple more people in the chat. We've got Comic Quarter 210 just stopped in. We've got Bad Dad 320. Anybody else I'm missing?
Hialeah, Comic Bro, my man from Rifleman Ten.
Welcome. Good stuff. What do you guys say about a book like Rifleman 10? Is that a novelty book? I mean, it wasn't intentionally a novelty at the time. So, but now there's this other wave of novelties that I would consider the inappropriate novelties, right? Things like the Alf 48 and this Rifleman 10. So, where does that fall into in the novelty categories?
There's also the comic collectors in the chat, he probably would know there's an Archie comic.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, where he's carrying
water. Yeah.
Right. And he says, I beat off 3 guys to get you, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's another one I really like from the Golden Age. I can't remember the title, where a guy is holding up a sparkling pearl necklace, and this girl is like sort of pushing her hair back and saying, "What do I have to do to get those?" And it's obviously a sexual inference to that. And that's from the 50s, and that was crass back then. As Bub would say, Dr. Freddy did not approve.
Right.
Yeah, so the Rifleman, though, it has a novelty, but is that a novelty comic? Not really, but it has a novelty collectability. I understand why those are collectible, but there's there's a whole slew of comics that have a cover theme that sort of has a pun or an inference or an innuendo to it that over the years has acquired more charm than the outwardly crass make your mom gasp when she sees you're reading that book from the 50s or whatever. But now it's become it's kitschy, and that's so it has a novelty aspect to it because of what it is. But yeah, I mean, it falls within the broad scope of what I was saying about novelty comics, even though that's not strictly speaking what me and Roger said was like the core of what a novelty book is. But yeah, I think that falls within the scope generally of overall of a novelty sort of book. Yeah, I mean, that's why it's collectible. There's nothing on the inside of that, or it's not a key. It's not the first appearance of any. There's nothing about it other than the inference on the cover.
And what's interesting? Yeah, go ahead, Roger.
No, I was going to say that. Yeah, DS I think is on the right road here. It's these double entendre covers. That they're their own almost genre. But it is the novelty aspect of it that is what make it collectible. It's nothing special. It wasn't a short print run. It wasn't an appearance. It was that somewhat, controversial cover and the way it's presented that makes it collectible. So I would say that would fall in the scope, again, the broad scope of when we say novelty. I would include it. Yes, I would.
Yeah, when you get back into the golden age, it's a very common theme to have sexual innuendo on a lot of GGA covers. A lot of Archie covers have really, really strong sexual innuendo on them. There's a ton of GGA covers from the golden age that have that. So it's not rare to see that, but there's a ton of them in the golden age, and now those have become collectible for what they are. You don't see them so much in the 60s. We moved on to superheroes. There's hardly any of it. It came back a little bit in the 80s. There were, a few SheHulk covers from the Sensational SheHulk and some other random ones. But, the 50s really is where most of those sort of sexual innuendo ones were, ironically enough, I think. I mean, if you did it now, it would be no big deal. I mean, you got Deadpool, he's going as far as you can probably push the envelope as far as what a character does or in comics. And you could slap any of this stuff on a cover now and it wouldn't even faze anyone. But in the 50s, it was shocking to the core of society when that was seen. And that's why they had a big movement to filter it out, obviously. But
and targeted to kids too, right? So
yeah, it's sort of a lost art because it doesn't have any effect now. You can throw, I mean, how many of the like Xenoscope comics come out now and they're totally nude, they're on eBay, and it's like, yeah, big deal. Nobody's like, oh my god, I found this comic, it's got a girl drawn nude on the front, completely topless, like, and she's turning into a monster, and it doesn't faze anyone. It's still cool, but it doesn't have the same effect as stuff from the.
Are you talking about this one, DS, for the SheHulk one?
Yeah,
that's one of them. Yeah, I've been looking for that comic at a reasonable price, but because I do collect novelty comics. I find it fun. I think it's interesting. I think it's cool that a book is only kind of valuable because it has a hook, if you will, that has nothing. Of course, that book, she basically jump roping through the entire book. So that one's kind of fun. Yeah, that's a book I would not slab,
Yeah, the Alf one, Metarog probably has the Alf one somewhere.
I do not.
Do you have it, Bob?
No, I do not.
I have missed out on it a couple of times. I almost bought one from a real. Anyway, I won't get into it. I've missed out on that book several times.
Yeah, that Alf one is cool because it's so hard to make anything have the same sort of shocking, catch you off guard theme like that. But Alf pulled it off because it's Alf and because it's an inflatable, I think, right? Isn't it an inflatable duck or whatever, bear or something?
That's obviously they knew what they were doing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not obvious, right?
And they did it in such a cool way that it captured that feeling of sort of shock and like, oh my god, this is obscene in sort of a charming way that only comic books can do. But it's becoming harder and harder to catch that because you can't just do some graphic violence sex now. It's like a big deal. It's all over society. So you've got to be more creative now to sort of capture that.
Right.
Where in the 50s, all of it was shocking and obscene at all. So
that was pre-code, but we're talking about the Alf and this one and the Rifleman are all coded comics, right?
Yeah, right.
So they were submitted and they were approved somehow. So, you know.
Yeah, if I want to make somebody blush when they're looking through my collection, I just pull out my short stack of Tijuana Bibles, and that gets them. So there's a fast road to that, you know. You don't have to beat around the bush, if you will.
Yeah, there's
you had the undergrounds back in the 60s and 70s. Those were
stuff. Our Crumb brought us
prurient to the core.
Crumb, that's his name. See, I had a ton of those books, and I had just kind of acquired them. I thought they were interesting. It's okay. I kept a couple of the Zap comics, but I didn't have a ton, and I just thought, well, I'll keep one or two that I like. And so I threw them on eBay, and one guy bought one of them, and he was like, "Did you know this was a big Art Crumb book?" I was like, "No." He was like, "Do you have any more?" I said, "Yeah." So I ended up doing a deal with him and just sold him that whole portion of the collection. Made pretty good money off. I had no idea he was such a big deal in the underground, inappropriate comic community. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was like the '60s Berkeley Grateful Dead hippie movement. Is where that started, and R. Crumb was the star of it. And they were small independent presses that put these out. They didn't put out a lot of them. They did numerous printings. So if you can find a first print of like a Zap Comics 1, it's worth a ton of money, no matter what the grade is. But they have a very strong cult following. And it even goes into the 70s, the kitchen sink press and that type of stuff. But Robert Crumb, I dig him, not enough to spend thousands, but if I came across some good ones for hundreds, I probably would pull the trigger. But very strong following on those. They're not easy to find because they didn't print a lot of them. And they're, when he was first started out, he would draw he would sort of just draw the storyboard of it and write it. And then he had, it was a little press. They did it like sort of like in the kitchen, and they would just print a bunch out sort of. And they would work it up into a comic and print them out. And then it became a little more popular just in the area. So they basically were just in California for a while, his early stuff. Right. So there weren't a lot of them. They just like hand printed them and hand stapled them. And he became more popular, and he turned down big jobs. He was offered, at the peak of his career, he was offered to do an animated movie. He turned it down. He was totally against any commercialization of his art. He wouldn't license it to anybody. He wouldn't allow anybody to use it for anything. He wouldn't take on jobs. He could have been a millionaire, but he turned it all down because he just wanted to put the art out the way he liked it for the love of it, and he wanted people to buy it because they loved it. He didn't want to try to make money off it. He didn't want it commercialized. He wouldn't license any of it. They wanted to do an animated movie, which probably would be really badass, but he refused to do it.
Wow, that's cool. That's good information. I love that.
Yeah, there's a cool documentary out there called Crumb.
There is. I was going to say exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interviews with him, and he's got two brothers that were quite talented artists themselves, one especially, Charles Crumb. But he never really went anywhere with it. And his family is got, it's an interesting look into the life of him and his family and the art. And he draws some stuff on there. He does sketches. He goes around, and he's a weird, sort of odd character. It's very cool. It's a very engaging documentary. It's called Crumb.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, I would recommend it. It's really fascinating. I mean, if you're at all interested in that countercultural underground comic and how that came about and his views, he has very somewhat drastic views on liberties and on everything that has to do with censorship and laws and things like that. But it's very interesting. I thought I didn't know a lot about him until I saw that documentary, so I thought it was very enlightening.
It's very graphic. It's very insensitive towards women. It's racially insensitive. But he does it in a lighthearted way. But he covers everything that's taboo and incorporates it into his art in his own unique style. So it's very offensive unless you understand what it is, and then you're not offended by it. But it's
the idea being that it's equally offensive to everyone, and when you're equally offensive to everyone, then that's a little safer than targeting.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely adult oriented. I mean, I wouldn't, go see it with the kids,
Well,
but
I remember in the time when, and I know I'm just old enough to remember the Village in New York the way it used to be, and I remember when they kind of cleaned it up and took all the sex shops out and all the, weed shops and, all the crazy. I mean, I remember when Coach now people just walk around in drag just like all day, like they go to work that way, and everyone's just like, oh, look at that, that's normal, we have to say it's normal, right? So it's like it's very different now, but back then, you everything was kind of sectionalized, especially in New York City, into communities, and that community, that kind of counterculture community, was all in one area. And now it's kind of spread out across the whole city, even uptown and in the highfalutins. But back then, all those rich people, when they wanted to get their freak on, had to go down to the Village to get it, and be that way. And that's where a lot of those underground comics were. You could find them there. They were handed out. They were kind of traded. It wasn't all even really commercial. It was more like going to somebody's place and they had them laying around and you picked them up and you transferred them from place to place, but they kind of all stayed in the area, And so I guess it's just different the way it is now to the way it was then. Back then, that was almost like a piece of contraband that you would only find in a community of counterculture people. Now it's a collectible,
Yeah, well, I remember, in high school, which is for me in the 90s, but I remember there was a girl who was considered a freak. And I remember one day she came to school with her hair dyed purple, and everybody was like, what the F is wrong with her? She's such a freak. She had purple hair. Now it's like, that's not even a thing, dude. Like everybody, everybody's dyeing their hair purple, and it's like nobody even takes a second look. And that was in the 90s. So, I mean, go back to the 60s or 70s.
I don't even want to tell you about the late 70s, early 80s, because, that it might as well be another universe compared to today. So, I mean, remember that when I was in elementary, that's when they started segregation, desegregation in the area that I was at. So, I mean, it's just literally like being on another planet today compared to when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s.
So do you think that these novelty comics are a way of kind of recapturing that oddity? Because like DS said, now it's like I noticed that there were a few even just 3D comics at my local comic shop that I guess Marvel's putting out a couple of 3D comics now, like one a month. And they redid an X-Men book, and I forget which one they redid this. I think it might have been a Captain Marvel book or something. And they're kind of giving them a 3D treatment. And I didn't see anyone buy any. They were like, the stack looked about as big as Diamond forced them to order, like 50 of them or something. And I don't think anyone bought a single one of them. And I don't think that, there for a while, 3D movies were more popular, 3D TVs, which I'm looking for one right now. I loved my 3D TV, and I had a ton of 3D Blu-rays. And now I lost it. The 3D TV broke, and I don't have another one. And I can't find another good, nice, big one, for sale for reasonable money anymore. But they were 3D TVs everywhere. So you think some of these novelties kind of go through phases or run out of an audience?
Definitely. Yes, definitely. Remember the 3D the 3D phase originally started really in the 50s. And that was almost every publisher had at least one or two, in that genre or that subgenre, shall we say. And then in the 60s, very rarely would you see one. So that just kind of faded away.
Yeah, I think for collectors my age, and it's a narrow band, sort of, I guess, like 80s, as I remember being a kid in the 80s. And I remember the 3D movies. There was no high-tech, like, digital stuff in the 80s. It was, you still would have, I remember 3D Jaws. It was like Jaws 4, Jaws 3 or something was in 3D. You had the classic, the theater, and You would have the red and the blue on each side. And I remember 3D kind of had a little resurgence in the 80s among a lot of little kid sort of things and some movies. And it was the type of 3D stuff like the comic books I'm showing. So this is sort of a throwback to 3D that I remember as a kid, which is why I think it's so cool. And the reason I like collecting them, I don't collect a lot of 3D comics, but I have, I've got 3 of them right here. I like finding them from the golden age with the glasses either intact or the original glasses still there, even if they're detached. And it's just such a cool, I can imagine at the time, because I remember when I was a kid in the 80s how cool the 3D movies are. You slap on those blue and red and everything had a sort of blue-red mixed look to it. And it looked 3D in a sort of a cool way. And I can imagine at one point in the world that didn't exist at all, and then somebody invented a way to do offset printing with red and blue lines to make it look 3-dimensional. And then I could imagine a kid looking at one of these books I have for the first time and being blown away by how awesome and cool that is. And I remember that in the 80s from some stuff, especially the movies. So that's why I like these. But without the original glasses, it doesn't have the same collectability to me. So I have the original glasses for all of these, and that's, I really dig these books, and that's sort of throwback to my childhood, which is well after the childhood of people who read these. But that's why I like the 3D comics. I even had a bunch of modern ones. They have the same sort of feel to me, and I like them, but I like the original, like the foundational ones. This is where it all started, sort of.
Yeah, I can see that. I like that, and I'll even take some of the reprints and things. Like this one here is a reprint of the one that you have up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll even take that. That makes me happy because I actually still enjoy, I don't know, it sounds bad, but like you were saying, when you were a kid, you like looking at it and it was like, oh, this is mind blowing. It still blows my mind.
Yeah, and that Superman has original Superman art that doesn't appear anywhere else. That's original, unique art of Superman that's not taken from any other. It's drawn originally for this. So the only place to see the art in here of Superman, of this art, is in this book, and the only way to enjoy it is with the 3D glasses. So yeah, very cool item.
Yeah, I like those.
And they're not too many. They're not. No. I mean, DC only did the Superman, the Batman. Anything else? I don't recall anything else.
Well, they did a later Batman, I think, too. They did one in the 60s that was 3-dimensional. I think they did a Superman, but they definitely did like a 1963 or 64 version of Batman in 3D. But these are the original one-shot DC ones. This is a 1953 set here. So they're real cool. I think they did a Batman in the 60s. I don't know if they did Superman. But no, they didn't do a bunch of other superheroes. It's just these two. I don't think there's any other ones, or I would have bought them up. I think there's a 3D Flash somewhere that I saw.
I'd like to see that.
Could be mistaken. Yeah, I'm not 100% on that, but I think there is one. I'm not sure.
I'd enjoy that a lot. Well, we have a small collection of these each between us for sure. I know, Roger, you collect a lot of these. Did we lose you? Roger, you still there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Just can't see you. Of course, there's no faces chat, so that works. I know that we collect a lot of promotional comics. Now, to me, the promotional comics is kind of in the same vein as a novelty comic. Of course, there can be some increased collectability from those because they might be rare or limited distribution or low print run. But there's some novelty to those too, I think.
Yeah, well, I think there is. And in fact, funny you should mention this because Lawrence from the Go-To Geeks and myself are actually working on a project where we're going to be doing a video probably in a few weeks, a month or so. And we're going to be talking about the different types of promotional giveaways, sendaways, included, public service, etc. But a lot of them have, popular characters that are not, and that are either touting products or are in stories that are not in continuity, but are in and distributed in a way that you cannot find in a comic book shop. So to me, those are novel. Again, that's sort of a different offshoot, but they have a quality about them that I really enjoy, because these were not ones that you could go into a comic shop with some exceptions and pick up. You had to actually go to the promotion, or you had to send it away, or you had to find it somehow. So I find it to be quite interesting, and much in the same way that I like the 3D comics. I collect those as well.
Yeah, and those promotional ones, depending on what they are, can be exceedingly difficult to track down because most people didn't fill out the thing or cut the proof of purchase off and send it in, or apply for the membership club to get that free thing. There's one that I really like, and I probably would collect that for my collection. It's not a golden age, but everybody's gonna know what it is. It's the Wolverine Nabisco send away variant.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, with like the X-ray sort of black and orange cover. It's so cool looking, and that was a Nabisco giveaway. And I think you had to like clip the thing off the box and send it in and get that. So not a lot of people did that. So there's not a lot of them out there, and that one's really tough to find. And it's really valuable because it's hard to find, and it's rare, and it's super cool too. So
yeah, the other problem with that book is that a lot of people like to get them signed, and they'll get like 10 signatures on that book because it has a lot of negative space on it. And then the price of that book is like, $1,400 because it has Stan Lee and Len Wein and Herb Trimpe.
Yeah.
Anybody ever associated with Wolverine gets to sign that book.
I know. I'd like to just find like a raw VF unsigned for like
good luck.
A couple $100, but everyone is like a graded, verified multi-signatures for $2,500, and it's like I'm not that into it,
Yeah, it's one of the few books that I'm missing from my completed Wolverine volume set. I mean, I think it's a 125, and for the 125, there's several versions of that book. So I have most of the other versions, but I don't have that one. And it kind of bothers me that I don't have it. But every time I see it for sale, I've made some best offers on it and tried to get it a little cheaper. But, man, it's higher for, and again, this is why we're having this conversation in part. It's because this is, I guess, the next point we can roll into. But do you naturally feel that there should be some sort of limit to the expense paid for a book that's purely a novelty book? Including mailaways and things of that nature. See, for me, it's not a true key, right? It's just a novelty version of a comic book that I already have in other forms. So I already have the interior. Much as you said that Superman book, the only way you can get that book, the only way you can get the interior art is by getting that book, right? Specifically. So if I already own the interior art of 125 3 other different ways, then the only thing I'm buying is the novelty of that book, being the cover and the the mail away aspect of it. And is that worth the $575 they're asking for it or not? So far, I think it's been no.
The price of anything is based on supply and demand, and when you get into some of these niche items, the demand is much lower than it is for like a Hulk 181 or an ASM 1 or something like that. So you have much less demand, but you also have much less supply. So you still have people that really want it, that collect promos, that collect the oddities and the scarcities out there. So you have a demand pool that's much smaller than for many other genres of books, but you have a supply that is also much, much smaller, and that's what drives the price. So I'm not a novelty collector, per se, but a lot of the books I collect are rare, and the prices for these books are up there with some of the pre-code horror books that I buy. And they're equally scarce, some of them, and there are people that collect pre-code horror, and there's people that collect the sort of scarcity oddball novelty books. The price makes sense, but not to me because I don't collect those. But there's not a lot of them out there, and there are people that want them. I mean, if you even look at, like, I'm not into price variants, but look at the Star Wars price variant, the 35-cent price variant. I mean, that is like the most expensive bronze book there is. Well, probably Uncle Scrooge 179, because that only came in a 3-pack and they didn't do many of them. Yeah. So that's also very rare, and that's super expensive. So the most expensive books in the Bronze Age, the top 2, are both because of a novelty sort of scarcity thing about them. The price variant for Star Wars and the Uncle Scrooge 179, which doesn't do anything for me, but it's super expensive because it's really rare, and people like to own rare things. So if you're one of those collectors that go rare book, yeah, it makes sense because you're only going to have a few people going after them, but there's not enough of those copies to go around. So the price makes sense, but not to us necessarily because we don't collect those. But I get it. I get it.
Yeah, for a completist, it's a must. You know, I think I've told the story. I worked with a famous DC completist. He had every single DC, starting from the All-American comics all the way through New 52. And what he didn't have was a lot of the promotional ash cans, variants, things like that. And some of those, he was willing to pay thousands and thousands as long as he had a copy of most anything. So right. Yeah, when you have people that have deep pockets and are committed and are dedicated to a goal, then that will drive price up of those. Like DS said, there's nothing different per se about it other than a very small price tag or a logo in the case of a little different dressing on Uncle Scrooge. But for a collector, that makes all the difference, and they need to have every single one of them.
Yeah, and let's be honest, when you get a new book and you put it on Instagram or you show it up on YouTube, yeah, you like to share it. Yeah, you like to tell everybody why it's so cool. You like to tell the story of how you got it and the challenges and everything of finding it or whatever. But, you know, to be honest, there's a bragging part to it. Like, haha, look what I've got. Very few people have it, and I've got it. I'm special. I'm awesome. Check this out. You know what I mean? There's part of that, and we all try to, you know, sort of one up everybody else in a competitive sort of lighthearted sharing spirit to it. It's not adversarial. It's, you know, it's communal, and we all appreciate when somebody does that. But to have
it depends where you're at. On Instagram, well, maybe so, but let me tell you, on Facebook, it's nasty out there.
Well, Facebook is an evil thing, and I'm not part of it, so I hate Facebook. I think it's an evil entity as far as I'm concerned, and I hate it. And that's why I'm not on it. But Instagram and YouTube are not like that. And I'll tell you, people like to have the highest graded copy. And then, you know, there's some guys on Instagram that have some of the books I have, and they have like a 9.6 of like a pre-code horror book. It's insane. I mean, I don't know how much they would even go for. It's on another level. But then somebody will get their file copy cracked out and pressed and graded, come back at 9.8. And then they don't have the highest graded copy anymore, and they're super upset. They're like fuming about it because now they don't have the highest graded copy. It's silly to me sitting down here with my 2.5s and my 3.0s, like your guys are arguing 9.6 versus 9.8. Like, but people want the highest graded so they can say, I have the highest graded copy, or I have the Mile High copy of this one, or, you know, I have Uncle Scrooge 179, or I've got the Star Wars price variant. You know, there's a bragging thing to it and a competitive nature that it drives us all to seek out to improve our collections over time. So it's a good-hearted thing. But yeah, to have something that nobody else has is a cool thing, almost no matter what the thing is. If you have something that's you know, totally retarded, but you're the only one that has it, it's still kind of cool.
Yeah, so here's one that I picked up, and it's a Wolverine 102.5. And this is mail away. It's a Fleer mail away, and the interior is really awesome. It's made up of borderless cards, basically, and each card has to have. It's a crazy story about this. I've done a video on it before, so I won't get into it deeply. But basically, it was crazy production requirements to this book. Every piece of it had to have so many characters in it in order to qualify to be a card. So, and it's all just borderless cards put together as a story, and it's really wild on the inside. But the only way to get this 102.5 was through mail away. And it is part of the volumized run of Wolverine. So as Roger was saying, I was stuck as a completist. I had to own this book because it was a volumized. It's 102.5. I got 102. I got 103. I got to have 102.5. You know what I mean? Now, if it was a 102 variant, I could do without it.
Right.
But where it's 0.5 and part of the story, what are you supposed to do with that? So what happens when your novelty book becomes part of some other set you're trying to create, and you're stuck paying the money more probably than you want to pay? I was lucky to find a low grade copy of this book because this is one that gets slabbed a lot too. And I definitely wanted it raw so I could look through it because it's so much interesting stuff going on the inside. So, you know, like Roger was saying, you get stuck as a completist. I got busted on this book. You know, I had to pony up for it. I didn't want.
I found a way around the completest problems. If anybody wants to hear it,
let me think. Of course, you want to hear it. Come on, let's have it.
All right. So, like any good comic collector, I also have a completist nature to me, and I used to do just the standard completist. I need whatever the title says is the complete title, then that's what I need. But I figured out a loophole, sort of a way around that, where I still mentally can make sense of being a completist without having to really get everything. And I'll explain why. If you can make your own list and write it down and then go over it and work out your own list on paper of a set that you want, and you will find that you no longer have to be a completist based on someone else's list. It's sort of like once you write down your list of a set that you write down, you start working off of that. It shifts your mentality to completing the set that you've now created. And when you complete that, it has the satisfaction of completism, as opposed to where you're just, you know, haphazardly sort of, I'm an X-Men collector. I got to use Marvel's list of X-Men to be the X-Men completist, and I'll use their. If you make your own list, like, you know, Silver Age X-Men or standard cover, the regular cover of this, or like, you know, I do a pre-code horror. It's a haphazard mix of random crap. But to me, there's certain sets, you know, like shark covers as a set, and I'll, you know, I break them down into, you know, like the pre-code horror range of shark covers, and that way I can feel like I can be a completist without having to get New Adventure 27, which is ridiculously insane. Yeah, so. But ultimately, I want that book. But you can make your own sets, and if you write them down and you make a list of sets on paper that you're working off of, you'll find that as you start to work those off and cross them off, you'll feel the satisfaction of completing it, even though you're not completing somebody else's list. You know, the Marvel's list or the X-Men title list, you can still be a completist and just go off your own list. And it works if you write it down and you just go off it. Very soon into that, you'll find that the completism sort of shifts gears into something smaller and much more workable and cheaper, obviously, too. That works for me anyway. It might probably not going to work for everybody, but like if you're talking about theme covers, you know, that's one way of doing it, right? I mean, if you want to, like you said, like I think JD wants to collect everything with elephants, right? Yeah. He's one of your golden guys. So whenever there's a Golden Age comic and there's an elephant on it and I see it, I'll let him know, because I don't know if he knows or not, you know. So yeah, but sure. If you're a Swamp Thing collector and you want the whole run of Swamp Thing, how about just the Bernie Wrightson run? And once you complete a set, you can pick a new one. You know, first 10 issues, bang.
Yeah, you can limit. You can limit.
There you
go.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, you can do like top 10 of an artist of, you know, top 10 Steranko covers. That's a set, man, and those are not hard to put together.
Yeah. Like what I did is like I was a Warlock completist, right? But once he came out of the Soul Gem again after the Infinity Gauntlet, you know, to me that was a different character. So my set is all until he defeated Thanos in when he first got the Infinity Gauntlet. It was a Marvel 2-in-1 annual and Avengers annual. So to me, that's where Warlock ended. You know, so I don't have to get Warlock Chronicles, you know, Warlock and the Infinity Watch and all that stuff, because, you know, honestly, that stuff, it doesn't appeal to me.
If you watch Don the Comic Book Junkie, to see what full-blown completism is, where if you want every Wolverine appearance or everywhere his word is ever written in the history of human language, you can do it. And it takes an entire room lined on every side with short boxes and long boxes filled to the brim. And it's a daunting task. You know, the fact that he has done that is, he's got to be one of only a handful of people in the world that has accomplished that. And I am not the kind of person that is even going to attempt that anymore. I don't have the space or the time or the mental strength. I mean, those type of people are the type of people that could hold out under CIA interrogation indefinitely. Never give up the secrets, no matter what. Like everybody has their breaking point. Those guys don't have a breaking point, I think, because
they'll die before they divulge their secrets.
Right, that's what I think. I mean, to undertake at some point, he had one or no books, and then his first couple or a comic shop or something. And at some point, he decided he was going to get them all, and he wrote a list out. And you ever see his want list? It's insane. I couldn't even. It's entertaining to watch, and I give the guy credit.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. But I mean, I can make a documentary just about his collecting of that stuff. But you know, I can't do it. So I break down the smaller sets. You know, you like Swamp Thing? Bernie writes in Swamp Thing run. There you go, 10 issues. You know, X-Men, Silver Age X-Men. Then you only have to go up to like 67 or 68 or whatever it is. You know.
Yeah.
Well, and then you can subtract things from bigger runs too. Like Roger was talking about, you know, once the character changed too much, then, you know, that run's over. That set's completed at that point. And I had my Wolverine run. I was working on it. I still have technically some issues that are incomplete because there's a period there during Dark Reign where Dakin, his son or whatever, I don't know, Dakin or whatever, takes over as Wolverine. I didn't collect those issues. I boycott those issues.
Well, it's not Logan.
Right. So for the end of that run, and it's like maybe 15 issues or so, I only have like 2 or 3 of them because I picked them up by accident, and I don't have the rest of that run. Aaron, I don't know if he's still in the chat, Deadpool 2323, he has a complete run of the X-Men.
Yeah.
To whatever it is, 550.
454 or something.
Yeah, 400 or something.
But he skipped the under 100 reprint issues.
Yep.
Right, that makes sense. Exactly.
Makes sense.
So even as a completist, you can take that big group and cut chunks out, and it still be a complete set. So there's a little, you know.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people are already doing sort of what I'm suggesting, but I see a lot of people's want lists and a lot of people striving to get like a full run of Spider-Man. I mean, Spider-Man's a tough one because really, if you're a Spider-Man collector, you want 1 through. You know, I don't know. What would,
800.
Yeah, if Spider-Man, if you're a Spider-Man completist, you're screwed because there's really nothing to leave out between 1 and 800. Really, it's
like you can collect the original run before they started renumbering, which was
that's true. Yeah.
You know, something like that. That's where my collection ends. You know, when Marvel in 1996, I think 95. When they went and they renumbered Avengers and Fantastic Four, that stuff, my collection stops there. You know, I don't collect anything after the original legacy numbering, and just like Aaron, I don't collect like I have my Marvel Giant Size. I have almost all of them except I think Giant Size X-Men #1, but I don't. There are some that were just pure reprints. I don't collect those. I have those already.
Yeah, well, here and this ties exactly, Roger, with what Jay Newcomb is saying and a couple others are talking about now is there are too many variants to be a completist. Not really, if you think about it, because all of the variants are essentially, they're not exactly reprints, but a lot of them are second prints, third prints, con exclusives, certain store incentive covers. I mean, if you have if you have any copy of that issue, you've got that issue. It's just a different cover. So if you want to be a completist for the interior and the story and the characters and the issue number, you don't need all the variants to do that. You just need one, and that's the book. If you want to be, you know, that's what I'm saying. If you want to be a completist where you have everything, well, now you're, you know, are you being a completist or are you being an insane maniac? Sort of is how I feel. Like you don't need to. It adds a level of stress to collecting for me that makes it not fun if I try to do that, which is why I stopped doing it and went the other direction. But
it doesn't
if you can keep your sanity together and do it, go for it. But I can't, and I notice a lot of collectors get frustrated with that part of the variance with completism.
It doesn't always have to be unattainable or massive. I agree that what Don's doing and other collectors, I'm sure, seems like an insurmountable task only because I know my own limitations, and they're not even budgetary. My limitations someday will come with age. What happens when, you know, volume 87 of Wolverine put out and I'm 87? who's gonna pack my, oxygen tank tiny down to the comic shop? Probably nobody. So at some point my collection will stop and I won't have that sense of accomplishment. And if you can break it down into sets, you can have that sense of accomplishment all the way through. But some of them, I have one that I'm working on kind of slowly and surely. I'm trying to get every cover, every different art covered. So that would be variants, right? For Tomb Raider. So the original Tomb Raider one, those 50 comics, Top Cow Tomb Raider. I'm trying to get every different art cover. So I say that because there's some that have like starbursts on them or something from a store. Some might have some foil on them. I collect those if I see them cheap. But for the most part, I just want everyone that has a different main cover image on the cover. And I think there's 50 of them total, right? 50 single issues. But as far as covers go, it's somewhere around like 130 different covers. So, and I'm somewhere around like 80. I have like 80 of them. So, there's a set that's attainable. It's going to be difficult and it's going to be a lot of hunting to get them all, but it's not like going on to infinity. I should be able to finish that before I'm 87 without too much help.
Yeah. Then the other thing I run into is space limitations, money limitations. Like I found myself at a point where trying to complete certain runs or sets and needing to spend money and dedicate space to stuff that I really didn't want. I just wanted to get it out of the way. And I didn't like the feeling of having to get something just to cross it off to get it out of the way. That wasn't fun for me anymore. So I just gave it up because to get fillers to fill out a run for me was just spinning my wheels and spending money for something that was like a job. It was like a task, like, oh, I have to go get this run. I was trying to do it with Thor. I was going to go from Journey 83 up to number 500 because that was the first Marvel comic, I think, that hit 500. So I was going to do that. And I had a lot of them. I had hundreds of Thor comics, Journey into Mysteries on up. And, I started to feel like, well, I have to spend money. I have to get this because I don't have this one and it fills in this run. And, I'm like, it's something that was like $379 or something. There's no key issues or anything. Yeah. $379 through $383 I don't have. So I've got to go get those. Like, oh, I guess I'll do that then. Next day off, I'll go see if I can find those. And it wasn't fun anymore for me. And so I just decided I didn't want to do that anymore. So now I just pick up books that are not necessarily keys or grails. I only go after books that are very important to me. And I'm much happier having far fewer books, but every book I have means something to me and I love it. So, that's what I said. Like when I say something, take it with a grain of salt because I'm, most of the time I'm wrong or have a different opinion than a lot of collectors. So, but like I said, man, that's how I feel about it. And that's why I completism. I see a lot of frustration with collectors trying to complete things. And I know the feeling for me was not fun. It was like a job. It was tedious. And if anybody else feels like that, man, there's another way. That's all I'm saying.
DS, I tell you, DS is all about, loving the community, intervening, in other people's, tragedies and troubles. I mean, the man is a saint on wheels. I mean, what can you say? I mean, that's he's here for us, folks. Yep. He's here for us.
I appreciate you, DS.
I really am. And
sometimes it's impeccable. Okay?
Sometimes it's hard love. Hard love is the way to do it.
Yeah. Hey, listen. When you do drug encounter groups, they're not going to say, "Oh, it's okay if you take drugs." No, they're going to say, "You are messing up. You are big time messing up if you take any drugs." That's the way it's got to be. That's the way it's got to be.
Yeah, it's you can't judge another person's collecting style or what they like or what they don't like, whatever. But I can judge when people are in the hobby and they're legitimately stressed or frustrated.
Yeah.
If you're feeling stressed or frustrated above a normal baseline level about your collecting, you're probably doing something. You should probably consider changing something because this should be a stress relieving thing. It should be fun. There's levels of stress to it, of course, and big part of that's money, but budgeting and whatever. But yeah,
I totally agree. If it's caught like, and I know people. I mean, they have a certain addiction to it, and when it gets to that point, when it gets to the point where you have to do something, you gotta look a little bit back inside and say, well, is this something that you're doing because you're enjoying it and it's something you look forward to, or is it something that you're doing because you feel compelled to, and it's dominating your life? If that's the case, you got to look past it, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to kind of grow past that fear of not being able to complete something, because the other problem is as a completist on occasion, you kind of abandon something for a while because you're not as excited. It takes so long and it's so much work that you kind of abandon it for a while, but it's always kind of gnawing at you, like, oh, why aren't I doing this? You know, Tats Comics in the chat made a good mention of something similar to that. He was saying he was close to completing his run of Web of Spider-Man, and then he just sold them all. You know, and I've been that way too. I've been just a couple of books away from completing a run, and I know that I no longer care about completing that run, especially when I'm at a convention. And there it is. I'm holding it in my hand. I know I don't have this book. I know it goes towards my run, and it's only $1, and I still don't buy it. That's when I know I'm over that run. And I pull out a couple of the key books that I like, and I sell the rest. So I've definitely been there.
I think that was Gretzky you're referring to, not Tat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, when you're struggling to pay a few bucks to get one of those run fillers, and it's like you have to debate within yourself whether to do it, that already means you shouldn't, sort of, for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
You know, there's debates on whether if something's expensive, you really have to debate, do I want to lay out this kind of cash for this book? Because that means I can't get other stuff. That's a different debate than this is affordable, but do I really even want to waste time with this or not? I need it, but do I want it? If you're considering what the difference between whether you need it and whether you want it, it probably means there's something else you want more. And so at that point, I came to realization, and I just started dumping things, and it culminated with my selling Hulk 181, which I only had for like 4 months or something. I only owned that for like 4 or 5 months, but when I sold that, that was the final piece of my transformation into the collector I am currently, which will transform again over time, of course. But where I am now, the full transformation finally occurred with the selling of that. So, you know, you've got to come to terms with selling stuff. Even if you have stuff you don't want to sell, at some point you might have to, and you should be prepared mentally to deal with selling books that you like. You know, so I came to terms with that, and it's tough. So it's really tough at first to sell books that you like, even if you don't love them. If you own them and you hate them, it's still tough to sell them because you don't want to sell your books. You just want to add more all the time. And it's tough when you first are considering selling, or you need to move something or clear some space or whatever. It's tough, but it gets easier, and then you realize that that's part of it. You need to sell and buy and trade, and you evolve as a collector, and selling is just part of it. So
one of the things I love about selling is the validation. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know back when I was first collecting, and I wasn't, as an adult anyway, and I wasn't selling anything. It was all just grab as much as I could, put them in the bins, and watch the boxes stack, right? And that was really exciting in its own way. But I've always been a bargain hunter, and I've always been looking for things on the cheap, or the cheapest way I can get what I want, right? Spend the least to get what I want. And then when you start selling books, you're like, wow, I turned a profit on everything I bought and sold. That's a level of validation of my skill in collecting, in bargain hunting, in finding valuable books at reasonable prices. When you're able to sell them for a profit, it kind of made me feel like, wow, I kind of know what I'm doing with this. This feels good. You know, now I looked at my collection not as something, because it was starting to get a little burdensome, as big and as scattered as it was, to now, well, hey, this is a gold mine I've already collected. I've already mined. I've already done the hard part. I've already mined the gold. Now it's time to sell it for cash and trade that cash into more gold, you know? So it's just a different feeling when you start selling stuff. It kind of feels good, you know, as long as you're getting a good deal. And I feel sorry for the people who collected, you know, everything of something that was relatively valueless, and that had value to them. It no longer has value to them, and when they sell it, it still has no value. You know, that sucks. But you know, I haven't had that experience yet, thankfully.
Well, I've had plenty of books I've sold at a loss. Yeah, I mean, it's part of it. You live and you learn, and you take risks, and you know, some books I buy specifically to flip, and I make a 20 times profit on it, and some books I buy to invest and hold for years and sell at a loss. And I mean, it's all part of it. It's, you know, when I sell a book for a loss, I just move on. You can't make a profit on everything. You make mistakes. I mean, I buy books still to flip, and I know what I'm doing, and I still get books that I cannot sell to save my life to make a profit, and I just have to accept it, and I just dump it and move on. And I'm like, don't buy any more Silver Age action comics to flip because nobody wants them. Do you know what I mean? I'm serious. Like Action Comics and Superman from the Silver Age, nobody wants them. And EC Comics, you cannot turn a profit on EC Comics. It's just, I've given those two areas up. But I tried to make the Action Comics and Superman titles from the Silver Age work because you can score good condition ones for cheap. There's a lot of them out there, flea markets, thrift stores, cons, wherever. And you just cannot, I cannot make money off of those things ever. So I just stopped trying, man. I tried so hard to make money off of those and you just can't.
Yeah, I think, well, except for 252, Action 252, and the first Brainiac
242.
242, yeah.
Yeah, but something like 361 and like, 320 and 2. Yeah. I had a 285. I had a 285 that I bought for $200, and I got it graded and it came back at 8.5. And I'm like, I'm in the money. This is the Supergirl revealed to the world with the ticker tape parade, and it's got like a John F. Kennedy appearance in it. Yep. I'm like, man, this is bank now because the seller undergraded it. I stole it $200. I listed it. I could not even get an offer on eBay or anywhere else. I finally sent it to Comic Link with some other stuff, and it sold for $200. Like, what the hell, man? Like, I wasted a freaking year on that book, and I'm like, this is a big book.
Yeah, you're right.
8.5 too is an 8.5, man. I mean, I might have made 300 off it, but after the 10% from Comic Link and the shipping, whatever. I mean, I think I made a couple bucks, but what a disappointment that was.
Yeah, you're right. Some of those longer DC runs will act like not Batman and Detective. Those move okay.
Oh yeah, those are great.
But even like adventure comics, some of the earlier ones do, but some of the later ones are also kind of, there are no real keys in there.
Well, I'll tell you, when I tried it with the adventure comics too, Silver Age adventure comics, and I'll tell you, a total failure to flip those. But what I got out of it, what I remember about the adventure comics is I would read through them, and I absolutely love the artwork and the story in the Silver Age adventure comics. Those comics are so cheap. Nobody wants them. They have no value, and they're freaking awesome. And if you come across them for like in a quarter bin or $1 even, man, they're fun to read. The art is great. They're really rock solid books.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we're we're talking about being able to flip something that's that versus the quality of the comic. And you're right. The adventure comics, really, the whole run, even starting from the Legion issues. And going into the Orchid, the Spectre, and then Aquaman, those are all solid runs, but they don't sell, not at all. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what's another awesome book that I liked that doesn't seem very sought after is the name sort of escaped me. Is See Something. It's a Silver Age book. Sea Devils, the Sea Devils. And that first cover of that first issue,
amazing.
Yeah, and the artwork and the stories are really cool. It's really cool stuff, and they're cheap, and like nobody wants them. But I think they're awesome to read. I was working on a run of Sea Devils, so that'll tell you how long ago that was, because I don't even have any more since I got on YouTube. But years ago, I had a whole early run of Sea Devils, and those were awesome. I really like those.
And Challengers of the Unknown also is a really cool series from DC.
Yeah, I was working on a full run of that, and the earliest one I had was like 4, I think, and I had like a fine range 4, and then I had like a near mint copy of like 11, and I didn't have a lot of other early ones. I didn't have number 1, obviously, or their first appearance in Showcase, but I had a nice run of that. I was working on a Sea Devils. I was working on Hawkman run, And
that's another one. Yeah, that's another good one.
And an Atom run. I was going to do the whole Atom and the whole Hawkman until they came together.
And they merged.
Until they merged. I was working on it, and I had more than half of each of those runs complete. And I had nice copies of those. I had the second appearances of Tana in like 8.0, and I made money on that. But
nice.
I was collecting that for myself.
And it's good, you know, and that's the old saying, right? Collect what you love and you can't go wrong. You know, blah, blah, blah. We all know it's a bunch of crap. The fact that yeah, collect what you love and love what you've collected, but you fall out of love with your collection sometimes and you fall in love with something new. And sometimes you look at your collection, you think, you know what? This could help me to get something else I want more. So if someone else is going to love it more than I will, I'll sell it to them. And as long as they pay me the amount of money that represents the love they have for it, and then it's all good, you know?
So we're selling love is what you're saying here.
Well, you know, I'm more or less.
We're love brokers.
Yes, we're love brokers. Exactly. Someone else loves it more than I do. I can still enjoy it. I can still love it. And something that I think DS can definitely testify to is when you have something in your collection for a while, like for a year or longer, especially if it's on display. Like anything else you put on display, sometimes you just stop looking at it anymore. You're just like, I see it. Yeah, I know I have it, but it doesn't capture my attention. You know, I've had books that I've stared at forever, and then I just hardly ever look at them anymore, you know? Yeah. So maybe it's time to trade that to someone who's going to stare at it for a year, and you buy something else that you're going to love just as much as you did when you got that other thing before.
Well, there's three categories of books in my collection, and this is how I break it down. There's books I want to get rid of, there's books I would get rid of, and there's books I won't get rid of. The books I won't get rid of are just, they're off the table. I'm keeping them. I love them. They're mine. The books that I want to get rid of are books that I have at this point, like what you're saying, Bob, like I'm tired of seeing it, or I'm over it, or I'm not in love with it anymore. Like I need to move that, I need to get rid of it, I need to get something out of it. And then the middle ground is books that I would get rid of if somebody else loves them as much as I did when I got them, but I'm not giving them away because I still like them some. But you know, I'm not going to give them away, but you can make an offer and I would sell them. So those are my three categories of books. And what I try to do is keep my collection fully stocked with the books that I won't sell, and try to keep very little of the books that I want to sell or would sell. So that's how I break it down. And when you really look at it like that, most of the books I had fall into the first two categories, and it was less than a third that fell into that last category. And so, you know, when I went through, I had a lot of internal debate about that. So yeah, I mean, there's like these 3D books, I would sell these if somebody was over here looking and like, oh man, I collect 3D, I need those, I love them, and they made me a decent offer. I would probably sell these, but I'm not going to put them on eBay or say, hey, anybody want to buy these? You know, these are like in the middle ground because I do like them, but they're sort of outside of what I collect, and I've had them for a while, and you know, they're really cool. But you know, some of the pre-code horror stuff I have, I'm not selling.
Right.
I'm sure those are hard to recapture. I mean, those 3D comics, you could recapture them.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
but to recapture that Thing collection and some of those rare pre-codes, that's a little more difficult.
Well, that Thing collection, that's the last run that I completed, and it's the only complete run I have, and I've got a complete run of all 17 issues of the Thing in really solid grades. I have number one is a 4, and everything else is like 6s and 7s and 8s. And yeah, I thought about if I would sell that, what would I even want for that collection? And the amount I would want is more than what they're worth. I would probably have to take like 20 grand at a minimum for the whole thing. And of course, they're not worth anywhere near that. So yeah, I love that set.
Yeah, that's a crazy price, which means you don't want to part with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, everything's for sale. Somebody gives me $1 million for anything. Right. Yeah, a whole collection, $1 million bucks, take everything.
Yeah. But, I would make a parallel. I mean, like your list, I mean, I know Bub has perhaps another opinion. Like, I don't really tire of looking at my comics, right? I mean, I've had a lot of my comics for 45 years, okay? And I don't tire looking at them, you know, that at least I've never gotten to the point where I'm like, gosh, I'm tired of looking at this store. You know, I can always, I look at it every day. I look at it, I see something different, something I appreciate, something which I think has value to me. But I do have a small part of my collection which I'm parsing through that not really, doesn't really fit with who I am, and those are the ones that are going to be either A-okayed or sold at some point.
Yeah, and then if you whatever you get for them, it doesn't even matter if you make a profit on them, because whatever you get for them, you try to get what you can, and you put that towards stuff that you're currently as a collector wanting, and that's sort of you gotta continually do that. You don't want to be stagnant as a collector and just always keep everything you ever buy. It's good to go through and find what you can turn over and add new stuff, get some new funds replenished, and get some new stuff, so some new blood in the collection.
Right. The only difference is that most of my stuff is boilerplate, but I do go through it about once a year, and every once in a while I do find, like my Human Fly. I had a complete Human Fly collection. A couple of years ago, I looked through it. I couldn't take that Robin's art anymore. I just couldn't do it. I almost threw up looking through those comics. So I said, no, I got to get rid of them. So I sold the whole kit and caboodle, on eBay or on one of the boards. I forgot, because it was one of those points where if that series really affected me to that point, I said, let somebody else, that can appreciate it more than I can, but that's a rare instance. Most of the ones I see, I appreciate them, and I have a constant kind of passion for them.
Well, yeah, you're lucky though, Roger, in a way, because I feel like your love for comics is just absolute and pure, and is not based on the dollar value. You will have a $1 comic and a $1,000 comic that you will love equally, and you don't care what they're worth. That's tough for me to do. Like, there's the money value is tied to my books intrinsically, and I love them as art, but I also, as I'm loving them, am well aware of what they're worth. And yeah, I don't know. It would be nice to be detached from that, but that's not the type of collector I am right now. Like, it's, I'm investing in these books as well, and there's a monetary aspect to this stuff too. And maybe it's because I'm blowing so much money on a single book these days. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
right.
That might be why too. I don't know.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, we're different strokes for different folks. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I just have, I guess because of how I grew up with them, and I bought them off the newsstand and 7-Eleven, and all the different memories that I have tied up into them, they have a value to me that's ineffable. And because of that, it's hard for me to see a scenario where I would say, I'm going to totally get out of comics. I already told you, we have in that episode we have, what's my end game? It's going to be to reduce at some point to a few boxes or so, but I'm never going to be totally out of comics. I don't see that ever in my future.
Yeah, well, I'm going to Heroes Con this week, and I don't have a lot of cash to work with. So actually what I'm about to do tonight and tomorrow is go through my collection and find some books to bring with me to not necessarily sell, but to see if I can trade. And I'm going to try to find books that I don't absolutely love, and books that are worth enough money that I can use to trade for something else that I really, really want. So I'm not going to go with a lot of money, but I think I've got some books I think that are decent books that I think I can trade up to something, really solid. So I mean, that's what I'm going to do, and I've never done that before, so we'll see how it goes.
So you guys are going to be up there Friday?
Yeah, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is the con. So yeah, I'll be there for that.
I'll be in North Carolina on Thursday, spending the day, and then I'll be going to the con on Friday. I don't know if I'm going to make it Saturday and Sunday. Probably just trying to go only Friday. If I can get a commission done and picked up the same day, then I probably won't come back Saturday or Sunday.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm staying right next to it, so I'm just going to go every day, all day, and just hang out there, even if I don't have any money. But you guys saw the new Jungle comics I picked up. Yeah, I'm just gonna bring that with me and see what what certain dealers value it at, because it's tough to put a value on that, but I think I got a good deal on it, and it's super rare and it's an early issue. So I think I'm gonna throw that in the mix, and I've got some other stuff I'll bring. So I'm gonna bring some cool stuff and see if maybe I walk out of there with something else different that I never owned before.
That sounds good. I'm going primarily to get a commission, and then I have a list of books that I have made. It's a price list. It's a want list of books with a price specifically for this con. Now, there's a lot more books than fit on that list that I want, but this is a moderately sized focus list for this con, and I have it on like Google Keep or something, some kind of note-taking app, right? And I have it shared with my wife. So while she's at the con, she'll have access to the same list with pictures of each book that I want and the maximum dollar that I'm hoping to spend for that book.
Wow.
So, and it's a real-time list. So if she sees one and we're separated for whatever reason, she can mark that she's found this book, what the price is, and where she's at, and then I'll see it update on the list, and I can go to her and start the negotiation process. So
wow.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. I don't think Mrs. DS is going to take a list and go search through books to find stuff on my list, but
well, you get separated, you never know. And you look around as you're, she might have a bathroom trip or something, and on the way back, she might trip over backwards on one of these books, and I want to be able for her to identify it,
Yeah.
So,
Well, Mrs. DS will see, she'll walk around if she sees, she can recognize LB Cole stuff by now, or pre-code horror or Golden Age type stuff that I like, and she'll tell me that, hey, there's this deal over here has this stuff. So that's how I'll approach that. But I don't even really have a list, man. Honestly, there's books I want, but I don't have a list like written down of what I want.
Yeah, you're going with your gut.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know everything mentally anyway, pretty much all the pre-code stuff. So you don't really need it, I guess. But next week's show, I want details, guys. Don't give me none of this. Oh, it was okay show. I want details. I want to know. Hey, I got a commission. I had to bump 3 people out of a line. I had to, I had to gamble. I had to blackmail. Whatever. I want to know details.
Well, I'm hoping Deadpool 2323 is available for next week's chat. If you're listening, this is already an open invite. I'd like to get it because he's going to be there all 3 days as well. I think actually he's only coming Saturday and Sunday. I hope to catch. I think he's coming in late Friday, and if I'm still in town when he comes in, I'd like to meet up with him and just lay eyes on him at least. So that would be cool. But I know he's going all 3 days, so I'd like to get his input too on how it goes. But me and DS are on a little bit of a side mission that day. So we're in our ever attempts to be shady and shifty. We're not really going to disclose what's going on, but next week we'll have the full story to tell.
After. Yeah, I know. Listen, you don't give away your secrets pre-mission, okay?
Exactly.
Obviously, but I want to know. I want details afterwards. I want to know what the collab. I want to know what the plan of attack was. Was it successful? Or were you just, you had to ad lib because it didn't work? I
will have plenty of details for you, but it's likely I will not have many books to show. So, even if I'm successful, I will get 1 book from the con. That's I went to Baltimore last year and I got 1 book, but it was a huge one. So that's probably what I'm going to do is try to get.
We know your quality over quantity, Dia. So we don't worry. We know your modus operandi. Don't worry.
Yeah, and I've already scoped out some of the dealers that are going to be there. It's a pretty big con, so there's some dealers I bought from and dealt with and talked to before that are going to be there. And I already know some of the stuff that's in their inventory, mainly from Instagram, and they show like bringing this to the con, or they have books that I know they were for sale and they pulled them from eBay and they'll be there. So I've got sort of a mental list what some of these dealers have, and so I'm going to see if I can work out a deal for a couple of those books that I know are going to be there.
My goal is to pick up as much Fiction House as possible. A lot of the Jungle stuff, a lot of if I see any Planet Comics. My number one thing is to get a commission done. I got to be one of the first people to the table to get that done. That's why I'm going Friday instead of Saturday, and try and get a commission secured. And then once I know how much that commission costs, then I'll have a budget for the rest of the day, and I can walk around and enjoy myself and know how much I have left to spend, because whatever the commission costs, I'm going to spend it. So it's going to be tough to pre-budget and know exactly what I'm after. I might end up with nothing but dollar books by the end of the day if the commission costs too much.
That's my speed. So, that's no problem.
Another thing I was thinking about doing was, not just for the con, but pulling out some of the books I have that are worth much more than I paid for them, and just looking at them as investments. And even if they're books I love, sell a bunch and put together a really big budget and try to get something like a low grade Suspense 3 or a low grade Fantastic Comics 3, the Lou Fine robot cover, or like a Scoop 2 or a Punch 12 in a low grade, something like that. But I would have to get rid of some books that I like a lot.
Yeah, those are you're talking really rare stuff there.
Yeah, so I don't know. I might be jumping the gun even thinking about it because I don't have the type of collection that I would have to sell a fair number of books to raise funds to buy one of those. I don't know if I'm at the point where I want to do that yet, but you know, it'd be awesome to have a Punch 12 or a Fantastic 3 would be awesome. Suspense 3, I just don't think anybody's even have one they're offering anywhere. But that thing's like 20 grand a point now, though, more than that.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Yeah.
The last guy I talked to told me he has like a 1.0, and he told me that this past summer he turned down $27K for it.
Yeah, because he'll never find another one. He just won't. That we know that he just won't find another one of those.
I know. 1.0 for 27 grand though. That's insane. So
that's too much. That is insane. But
yeah,
it's true. It's just that tough of a book to find.
Yeah, if I ever got that though, everything else is downhill from there because that's my top book.
Okay,
that's my Action 1. But
I guess that's true also. Yeah, I guess that's true.
But I don't even know if you'd have to, even if you had $1 million, it would be tough to locate one of those, I think.
Well, I don't know. For $1 million, I think you could ferret one out if you put a bounty on it like that. Yeah.
I mean, if you were gonna pay 200 grand for a 1.0, I'm sure you could ferret one out. Yeah.
Yeah. Finders fees abound on that one, Roger.
Yeah.
If you're doing the bounty rolls, heck yeah, man. I'll find you that $1 million book, but guess what? It's gonna be $1 million too.
Yeah.
When I do.
Yeah, but to get one at like fair market value or like a quote GPA price for that book, you not only have to have the money, you've got to have somebody that's willing to sell it for fair market value. And
that's not
maybe that means fair market value is higher than what it is, sort of ironically, but I don't know.
But if you have something they want though, that could be the closer. If you have something they want plus cash, that might close.
What books are you gonna have that's so rare as that though? That'd be tough.
I didn't say I just said that's possible.
Yeah, I got a Black Cat in 7.0 and a Startling 49 in a 4.0. Those two together, I could probably trade for something massive were I so inclined. But those are my two favorite books, probably. So
yeah, that's happening. And you're going backwards trading.
Yeah, so I'm not at that level yet, but it's going to be fun to go to the con and see books. I just like walking around and seeing dealers that have like New Force Comics. I'll have like 3 or 4 showcase 4s and like 5.0 just in the middle of his wall, not even on the top. And it's just crazy to see that.
Well, guys, I know we're all love chatting, but I can tell by the shortness of Roger's breath that if you didn't know, he has a dog with an overactive bladder. Dog's got to go for a walk.
Dog's got to go park.
The dog's got to go park. So there you go. So I want to thank everybody in the chat. I want to thank everybody, of course, on the panel. You guys are awesome every week. I thank you so much. And everybody that's joined in on the chat, you guys are awesome. I think you already know you're awesome. That's why you all come together on Monday night to hang out with us, to share in your awesomeness with us. And I thank you for that. So I want to tell you that we're coming up on a year's anniversary for the show. Next month. First week of next month will be a year's anniversary. Roger's done the Reese official show, and he told me today that it's sometime next month. So July. He told me exactly.
July 1st, I guess, would be the year.
We'll do it then. So we'll probably be getting together. We might do a little bash and rehash some of our old topics and do a little commemoration show. But I want to thank these guys here with me for doing this show with me, for making me do the show when I didn't want to do the show from week to week, which is almost every week. No, not at all. I love it. You guys are great. And thank you all, the little audience we've had. As DS likes to say, we've got quite a little group that seems to come every week, and we thank you for sharing time with us. It means a lot, and it's definitely a huge highlight in my collecting, if you will, in the hobby for me, definitely on YouTube. And it's been a lot of fun, and it really has been an interesting chapter in my life. So thank you to these guys, and thank you to everybody in the chat for joining us always. I'll say my goodbyes real quick. Thank you all. We'll catch you next time. And Roger, if you want to say goodbyes, and then DS, that'd be good.
Yeah, I echo what BUB'S said. I think DS will also agree that this is more fun than should be legally possible. Having these fine gentlemen to chat with, and everybody here in the actual chat has really taken my collecting to another level, because now I get to share so much more than I could before. And because of that, I'm very grateful to everybody who has stopped by. Scoon, who's just now got here. Don't worry about being late. We're honored that you're here. Evan, all you guys really make who we are. Without you, there's no show. We could Google Hangout and talk to three of them. But with you guys here, it really makes the show. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for the past year, because it really has been a special time. So everybody, remember to be blessed and be back next week on the No Faces chat.
Thank you. DS?
Yeah, so until I get my time machine up and running, which will blow the fun level out of the water of this show. Till then, this remains my highlight of my week, and this is the super most fun comic thing, and I'm really awesome. I enjoy it. You guys are awesome every week. So yeah, and everybody in the chat, it's like my collection. We don't have a ton of books, but the ones we have are all grails. So that's how I feel about our people in our chat. So yeah, thanks everybody. Do your homework. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks. I like that. You guys are the grails. I love it. Thank you all. We'll catch you next week on the No Faces Comic Chat. Have a good week. Thanks. Read a comic. Bye.